song. It's not live yet. It's about to. Music on you. And we are live, back with Sustainable Sundays. Join us today. Welcome.
Welcome to all. Welcome to all. We are gonna start. As you can see from the screen, we have like a new Sustainable Sunday, and this title, just remember it, because we're gonna explain who is with us today. Maybe Moran, if you want to say a few words on what we are like seeing on the screen. These words is a title of to you the floor.
Thank you. Welcome, and so great to be back again on these Sustainable Sundays. Today we have a special guest named Bert Cohen. It is my great honor to have you here, our great honor, and wonderful to be able to introduce you. Domenico, I believe that you have a few questions for Bert, and I'm looking forward for everyone to meet each other. We also have Larry Tishkoff on the line, who is another great honor for me to have here with us. I'm glad to have you guys here. Welcome to Sustainable Sundays.
Great to be here.
Thank you, Bert. Thank you, Larry, for being here. Yes, I have a few questions because basically I'm very interested on the title of this book and also this word drawdown. Just to like a little bit to get the audience know about what is drawdown, but I don't want to say too much because I want Bert to a little bit explain also the meaning of the title. Today we are with the authors of this book that is dealing with solution for reverse global warming. So, Bert, first of all, the first very question is drawdown. This word, can you explain a little bit better? And can you also introduce in this way yourself and also the meaning or and the willing on what you want to do with the book?
You are a good interviewer. You packed 4 questions into one sentence. So let me start with who I am, because I think part of sustainability is always how do we connect with each other? Because I think that's the most powerful thing we can do in sustainability. I think now it's over 50 plus, at close to 60 years, I've been in education of one sort or another. And one of the recent things I do, I chair a committee on sustainability for the city of Portsmouth. And one of the sweet ideas that one of our committee members had, he was a school board chair, he said, we should have 2 students from the high school here on the committee because their voices would be important to hear. And so after a year or 2, we actually initiated a eco club member from the high school to our committee. And then after 2 or 3 years, there were these 2 young women who were coming because we suggested maybe more than 1, 2 or 3 would come so that we'd have a little core of people seeing our committee and also learning how to participate in government. Well, these 2 young women were on the committee, and I had heard about the book Drowdown, and I was talking to them. They were going to graduate, and I said, you know, it'd be really nice if we shared this book Drowdown with students. And the reason that it clicked, well, these 2 students were really, in my mind, very special people. They were bright, they were socially conscious, they had traveled to different countries for sustainability on high school programs. And they were very committed and despondent. They were feeling, with all the news that was coming out, all of the news about what was happening to the environment in so many areas. And we know the litany of things from species extinction to pollution, and they just were inundated with it. And when they read the introduction to Drawdown, which said, there is a solution, and it's not hypothetical, it's already in practice. We know how to do it. We can do it. That gave them inspiration. And so they said, with the idea that there is a solution, then why aren't we doing it? And why we're not doing it is because there is not enough political will. It's just prioritizing to get it done. And so these two young women and myself worked for a year putting together a slideshow that they could go around and present to people in the state, and introducing Drawdown because it was an inspiration to them, and it could help create that political will that was so necessary. So then COVID came on, and we are now doing Drawdown through a Zoom conference. So the answer to your question, that was kind of, who am I? I'm committed to myself, to my kids, to my grandkids, to my students, to you, to the world, to my pets, to the trees, to the planet, to have it be as healthy a place as it can be with the best knowledge that has been given to me. So that's a little bit of who I am, and that's why I'm involved with Drawdown. And now your specific technical question about what Drawdown is, unless you want to comment on what I've said, Domenico.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your as many, I tried to combine the words. You are being great in combining the answers. So thank you very much for your answer. But I have another question. This was, okay, a complicated one, but I want to come with a second. You mentioned education, and you referred also to your work with the schools and with also the youth and so on. And this is something very important also for the climate scenario, education. I refer properly to education. Yes, on that I want to ask you. Sometimes education, we are talking about several solutions that are technical, that are very based on applying the science on the field and so on. But also, for example, the Paris Agreement is mentioning education as one of the key pillars to fight climate change. So one point of view on how can we combine education with the technical action, for example, that are needed, also to engage the children in do something. And how do you think that the participation can help the implementation of measures?
What I take out of that is the central question for me, if I have what you said, is how do we take action for climate change? How do we actually get on the ground to get something done? Is that part of your question? How do we educate to get there?
Exactly.
Well, I think it's good to have a video podcast. Talking to people you like and having fun doing it is one way. Uh, Another way is this. Um, I feel that education, since I've been in it for a long time, has so many different layers. And one of the things I did with some colleagues at the University of New Hampshire for 25 years, I taught a course on systems thinking for sustainable living. So one of the fundamental mindsets that was helpful for me to see and to live up to in the best way I can is to approach problems or issues, if you will, from a systems approach. And then that gets pretty darn complex because I remember when I was really young, like 50 years ago, I was listening to something Buckminster Fuller, who was a great systems thinker and viewer of big patterns. And he made the statement, I'm not a noun, I'm a verb. And that's had a lot of implications for me because a noun is something that is definitive and fixed and you can look at it. And the reality is nothing is a noun. Everything is a verb, it's in motion. I studied art at UCLA and got masters and MFAs in painting. And I used to do a drawing and I was doing a drawing. Wait a minute.
Yay. Wow.
Wow.
And when I was doing that drawing, I did it over a period of months. And I realized I could not ever do the drawing as it was because every day when I was drawing out for an hour, the light would change.
Wow.
And every time the light changed, then the highlights changed. And then over months, there was dust. So do I draw the dust in or don't I draw the dust in? So even in something as simple as doing what would be a still life, it's not still.
Wow.
And so your answer to how do we educate kids? So some of the things I'm working with now is the light changed. I just heard a voice. Did
No, and there was like the feedback from the streaming, but don't worry.
Okay, good. So your question is how do we educate kids? So I worked with first graders for over 11 years. And I worked with graduate students and doctoral students at UNH. And basically, I think I don't know if I have a direct way of, I'm not sure quite to go with that, but the education really is the process partially, the means and the end are one. So how we engage with first graders or how I engage with a graduate student, the real task for me is how do I respect them and myself? And so there's methodologies that will engage in a respectful way. And that's why for years I'm going to sound like I was 200 years old, but for 25 years I was in a program, master's program for teachers in experiential ed. And experiential education is a respectful way for us to engage in life together to learn what we need to learn, because being a verb, since everything is in motion, we need to continually be tracking what is real. And so to educate, I think I first would say I work with myself every day to try to be as respectful as I can. So for example, when I said I taught first grade and graduate students, I was aware, oh, I want to impress you that I taught graduate students. So there's my ego getting in there, and that diminishes my ability to really be present to your question. So I carry that with me all the time, and that's just part of living. So how do we educate? We work on ourselves to be good human beings, and then everybody is in a specific situation. I once saw somebody talk about the individuality of a snowflake. Each of us is a snowflake, and it's our particular system that we're in. If we're a first grade teacher, if we're a doctoral supervisor, if we're running podcasts, those systems all have opportunities for us to bring information out that will enlighten. I feel that was a long way around you, because most of them would like, what do we do today? Like recycle a can and do, if I got down to a first grade class, I'd say, okay, here's what we do. We go out on the yard, we pick up all the trash, we weigh it, we then we lay it on the floor and we analyze where did it come from. And then we say, okay, if there was so many bottles here and tin cans here, then we say straws, let's get rid of them. So you can get down to the nitty gritty. So I threw out a lot. I don't know if you want to respond to that. I could go deeper, but I feel like I was rambling a little.
That was beautiful. And I know Domenico has a third question, but can you hold it for a minute?
Sure.
Okay, because I would like to also hear, if possible, an expansion on that question with the education, which is really, how would you describe the role of education in what needs to be done in order to kind of stabilize bring ourselves to balance, so to speak, or in this challenge we all have that we're talking about? Like, what role does education have in that, in your opinion, in climate change sustainability?
Well, the things that come to mind first is the first step in anything is awareness. If you don't know about drawdown, you don't know there are solutions, then you can't use them. So awareness is what I think when we do a program like this, or there's a TED Talk, you become aware of something first. Mm-hmm. Then I think experiential education can help integrate that into your life. So if I say I want to be a vegan, and I'm working with a group now that we're doing the third most important solution that we have in here is food waste. No, eating a plant-rich diet. Fourth is food waste. But all right, so you need to become aware that eating a plant-rich diet is one of the third most powerful thing you can do on the planet in terms of carbon footprint. That's amazing.
Wow.
That's amazing. I didn't know that. And so when I found that out, it helped me, along with other things, become a vegan. And then we have a program now that we're trying in where Portsmouth has 100 restaurants for a town of 20,000. And we're working on a program on Earth Day for 3 days to have the restaurants all do one feature vegan meal that they're creating specifically in these restaurants, inviting people to come and become aware of plant-based diet, and we're going to educate in that way. And in our area, there's a organization called Harvest, and Harvest is getting vegetables and outdated fruit products that are still good, and they have food pantries. And so we're trying to coordinate plant-based diet, Harvest, and people who can't go to restaurants or would normally wouldn't. How do we make sure that they get some of these recipes? So we're trying to do social justice, we're trying to do education on really wonderful ways to have a vegan diet. And when you said, how do we specifically educate, I think was the question. It's dangerous to ask me a question, let me go. But that's, it's awareness first, then connecting it to your own life and your own situation, because everybody's system is different and everybody's skill level is different. So Marani and Domenico, you have skills now on how to do this podcast, video podcast that Larry and I don't have. So now you can leverage that. And in systems thinking, when you're educating, you always want to go for leverage. So I wanted to find two things, leverage and drawdown, since that was the original question that Domenico started, and I can do those unless you want to comment on this. And Larry, I see you talking.
I actually just wanted to share something. If I'm not mistaken, the term education or to educate really comes out of to shine a light or to bring into the light. So one of the ways in which education, I think, is particularly impactful for the whole issue of drawdown and sustainability and reversing climate crisis and global warming is, if I remember back 40, 50 years ago, very few people were sensitive to the issue of the environment and ecology. A tiny fraction of the world. Today, we're in a much better place. And part of that is because there's been a lot of education going on by many, many different organizations, governments, businesses, et cetera, over the years. And all of this has collectively been shining a light in areas that were previously dark. When people don't know about the fact that we are harming the oceans, or that there is a threat to the biodiversity of the earth because of certain human practices with regard to fossil fuels, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. If you don't know about it, then obviously that you can't do anything about it. So education is perhaps the first step to shine a light in all of these areas so that people can become aware and then take the next step, if they so choose, and that is to do something. And that's the connection with Drawdown.
Thank you very much, Bert, and thank you very much, Larry. I think that I'm very satisfied for the answer, because you touched the point, the awareness. Without awareness, we cannot have a concrete and real action, and also long-term action, something that lasts also in time. And yeah, I totally agree with your point, and I totally agree that awareness and education is the first step to also engage processes, because the change is also a process, and so needs to be like started, guided, and fostered, and not just I can say put as something that is top down, and we can just like make without any awareness properly. So my last question, then we can engage also more a little bit discussion. Moreover, my basic question is related to the actual time of today. You talk about the complexity, and that we are in a way connected also with the among different sites. The complexity also reflects, for example, in the health issues, so the health of humans, but also the health of the planet. And currently we are facing a situation of a health crisis. My question is about which kind of difference or maybe analogies you can find in this crisis, the health crisis related to COVID and the climate change crisis.
I think of a visual cartoon that you might have already seen, where there's there's a wave coming, and it's I don't know, economic, then the next wave is the pandemic, and the next wave is the climate crisis, and obviously the climate crisis. So you can solve the two shorter ones, but if there was a huge wave comes over you. So I think what your question brings up for me is our snowflake quality. I've been doing some workshops now on Drawdown. And what I find is the people who come to them are people who already know a lot about climate change. So why are they coming? And why are they coming to the workshop that I'm putting out? So my thought is that each of us is in a unique place to talk to specific audiences. So when I was a first grade teacher, I knew how to talk to first graders about pollution and now what this podcast I think is doing and what Drawdown is doing is talking to people who are already highly knowledgeable, because no longer is it information that is lacking. Information is cheap. In fact, it's almost an impediment because there's so much. So what I think is happening is those of us who are knowledgeable to some degree, as much as anybody can be, about the information, the awareness, is doing what Larry was saying. How do you go to the next step? And the next step needs to be done with others. And so, again, I'm talking a little bit around, but the health pandemic is an issue that I'm not knowledgeable about. I know people who are, but that's not something that I can talk to. So that's not probably going to be my leverage point. So what I want to do is work in systems with, if anytime we do a systems problem to solve it, I think when we used to assign a systems problem to students, we'd say you could choose any problem you want. However, you'd be very smart to get somebody in your group who has expertise in that area. So say the four of us wanted to do something about the pandemic and the economic situation and the detriment to the environment. We would want to get somebody who is knowledgeable about the pandemic, because I think about all the time of all the gear, plastic. My granddaughter is an EMT, and every day she puts on all this plastic. I'm putting on, and I'm saying, where is this coming from? Where is it going to? So I think that there are very specific nitty-gritty things that can be done within the field if we have somebody who knows about how the field is operating. And then when we collectively come together to do something. So one of the things about Drawdown, it's a collective tool to get us all on the same page. So can we work at it together with experts? And the way it would relate to the pandemic would be, I would say, take it as a systems approach and get multiple channels together to work on it. And that's a pretty generic answer, but I don't know if that's where you're going, but.
Even if it's genetic, it's always great to hear, because there's always, these are new ideas for a lot of people. And we want it to get out. So it's good to repeat. And I think that that's an excellent way to be efficient with the resources that we have. And don't we know it, that there are lots of people doing lots of things, as you said, all over the world, and for many years and decades even. It's just hopefully, and I mean, looks like it's being talked about and addressed more and more seriously in the last year alone. You know, there's been a lot more talk about it in even mainstream. So yeah, maybe it's the butterfly effect finally.
Yes, but I can say, so, oh, sorry, Bart.
No, go ahead.
I can say that is not generic at all. It's properly, I think that the answer that I want to get related to the vision on a systemic way. I totally understand the image that you were mentioning, the one of the waves. It's also one of my favorite, because it explains properly how we can see the crisis as even greater waves. But when you find the way to surf, maybe the bigger, that can be, for example, climate change, you can also surf or overcome to the others. So it is kind of this is my opinion, this pandemic is kind of also test for addressing a systemic crisis. Because this pandemic is not solvable with just, I can say, intervention in a clinical way, but we have to act as a community. We have to act together with education, with the knowledge about the problem. So it's totally, I think, valuable, the answer that you said, because it's underlined the fact that we have to address the health crisis in a systemic way. So thank you very much, Bert, for the answer.
You know, Domenico, if I can just comment for a second.
Sure.
In regard to the COVID crisis, somebody basically said, you know, it's a dress rehearsal.
Yes, exactly.
In preparation for the big one. And
exactly.
it requires cooperation worldwide. We're not going to resolve the Corona COVID crisis by taking care of our backyard or our own little community, our village, our town, our city, our state, or even our own country. We have to basically cooperate on a worldwide scale, which is the concept of the dress rehearsal for the climate, because there's no question the climate doesn't see or recognize political boundaries at all. Moran and I live here in Israel, and we have boundaries between us and our neighboring countries, whether that's Lebanon, Syria, the Palestinian Authority Jordan, Egypt, Saudi Arabia. But climate issues don't recognize those political boundaries at all. So we have to find a way to talk to our neighbors. They have to find a way to accept us and to talk to us if we want together to make any kind of an impact long-term on climate issues.
Thank you, Larry. I totally agree also on the concept of dress rehearsal. I'm very in line with that thought. So yes, coming back to Drawdown, you mentioned that there will be some events also related to the community of Drawdown. Yes, maybe we can take the chance also to remember some of them. And also, Moran, if you want to add something.
Well, I think this is already an amazing conversation, and it's literally almost like just that part where you're sparking the match, and there's like so much to dive into. I mean, I even have the book Drawdown, and I've understood it's like a Bible. It's like just very inspiring to read. You can pretty much like flip it and open almost any page, and there's something fascinating, something that's inspiring to think of what you can apply into your own lives so easily. And so this entire conversation feels like it's just such a small drop in the ocean, but also super positive and optimistic. And that's the part that I think is really, really exciting about the Drawdown, and the fact that we just all agreed that education and awareness is one of the greatest starting points of getting to overcome climate change, because also so many people have heard about it but don't understand it, or heard about it, understand it, and aren't sure what they can do about it. And I just think that's that in itself is a light right now, to know that there is something like this out there that happens to be ready on time at this point while we still have some time. And I just don't want this to end. No, but I think it's amazing work also, Bert, that you're doing for so long, and that you've also found a way to use this educational tool to inspire people. And it's really wonderful to have you here. And I'd like to just ask one thing before we sort of wrap up, which is, could you is it possible in a sentence to tell our viewers why Drawdown for you, or like why do we agree that we think Drawdown should and could become a household term, for those who have not yet been introduced to it?
Let me say two things. One, what is Drawdown? Do you want to define that, anybody?
I'd love for you to.
Drawdown, what we're talking about with climate change is that the greenhouse gases, CO2 and methane and other greenhouse gases, have been continually on the rise. I think most people are aware of that. That's going up, CO2. CO2 gets up to a point where it becomes a blanket and it holds the heat into the earth. So when it goes up and gets to be too thick of a blanket, it's heating up the earth and causing all these climate changes, perturbations, more floods, more fires, more drought. It's just because there's more heat being contained. So that we need to bring down the amount of greenhouse gases that are going up. So if you look at it as a curve that's going up, there's a point where you can start to bring it down, it levels off, and then there's a specific point where the greenhouse gases are no longer going up, but they're starting to come down. So that's very similar to the pandemic. Exponential growth, we want it to peak and then we want to get it down. So drawdown is the point at which we start to get a handle and bring it down. Is that clear and simple? Okay. So if that's what we want to do, then Drawdown has had scientists and researchers now for many years, originally 2 years and now more, and it's ongoing. Well, if we want to bring it down, what does recycling an aluminum can compare to in getting my refrigerant and my air conditioner recycled well? Which one should I put energy into? And so they said, let's prioritize them and say, what are the most important things to do? They all need to be done. But if I have a leaking roof and I have a squeaky door, I'm going to get the leaky roof before I get the squeaky door. So that's what I like about Drawdown. It gives me a priority. It tells me what I should pay attention to have leverage. That's one thing. Second, I wanted to give an example of how it can be used, because I don't think anybody I know has picked up the book and read it from cover to cover. That's like saying picking up a dictionary and read it from cover to cover. It doesn't make sense. You pick it up where you have something that you want to get from it. Plant-rich diet, educating girls, solar farms. So when there's a specific issue in our particular local neighborhood, we can say, how does it relate to one of the 100 drawdown solutions? By the way, there's 80 of them that are already on the shelf, ready to go and being used. And there's another 20 of them that are on the verge of coming on board. So I said, where are the 100? Well, there's 20 of them in the next 5-10 years on board, coming on board. So I'll wind up this with how it's being applied here in Portsmouth. Because we have a new city manager and a new city council, we were able to meet with the city manager, and she said, gee, Drawdown's really great. Why don't we get it to the city council? Because it is like Larry was saying, there's no boundaries between political points of view. The planet and our health is kind of unifying. So let's give one of these books to each of our city council members. Let's have a workshop for 2 hours and introduce them to it. And then let's educate anybody who wants to get more in depth what the top 10 are. And then let's have an action committee come out of that. And let's, in the city, from the sustainability point of view, every time there's an issue, let us bring the council and the community's attention to that issue from the larger framework and say, this is the long-term solution. You have the hard job. It's not easy on a local city council to decide whether you want to have a synthetic turf on the football field or you want to have an organic garden, maintenance. And so there are very specific solutions, but this gives us a little bit of a criteria to say what's going to give us a long-term solution. And so that's what I think we want to do as educators, is have this become a reference point so we can say, how does it relate and help us get there? And there's one piece of information, if we have time, I would share with you.
Sure.
We have a couple more minutes. Go ahead. We're going to wrap up in a second.
All right. So we'll talk about awareness. I was reading that podcasts and streaming uses more energy than all the air industry. Okay? That's Larry, you know about
Oh,
that.
no. Okay.
Yeah. So
Please
that's
send us information after this.
yeah. And so And what can I do individually? I store all my junk mail. I just let it store. That is storing. It's like I'm leaving a light bulb on in these storage centers. So personally, I'm going to start to look at something that I wasn't aware of before. And so there's no end to this, but there is working together and having a joyous conversation like this. And thank you for having this talk.
Thank you to
Could
you,
I make
Bert.
a
Sure,
final
sure.
comment? For anybody listening who is curious, until such time that you can order the book from Amazon or your local bookstore, please know that you could actually access a website. Just put in Drawdown into your browser, Google or whatever you use, and it's pretty good. It's not the book, it's not all the information, not every one of the 100 solutions. It'll give you enough information to get you started. So I wanted to point that out.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Larry. So as Moran said, we are going to wrap up. So if you have some final remarks, Bert and Larry, let's make the final remarks and then the floor to Moran.
You want to go, Larry?
I just basically said it. Go to the website and take a look. You'll be blown away to learn how is educating girls connected to taking care of the climate. It's fascinating.
Thank you very much, Larry. Bert, to you.
I would say that one of the most sustainable things we can do is to have good, meaningful conversations. So I thank you for giving us this opportunity.
Thank you to you, Bert, and a very pleasure to have you here with us. Sol, for you.
Thanks. Well, while this flew by, I would like to refer to something I heard Jane Fonda say yesterday, which was, have fun while you're doing it. Don't forget to have fun, or something like that. And Bert, what you just said, plus adding one more thing that I know is very important to you, Bert, and having you here is exactly part of this, which you always say how teaching plus building community, not just touch and go education, is what Hubzine and also B is all about, and what Sustainable Sundays is all about. And having you guys here on this is exactly part of us expanding the community aspect of creating awareness and inspiring people and having that smile on your face, knowing, okay, well, you know, we're alive, we're here, we've got some reasons to be hopeful, and together we can do more of it. And there's so much more to be said. I can't believe it's over, but we'd love to have you back some other time. It's been really nice having both of you here, and Domenico, as usual, so wonderful running Sustainable Sundays with you. And this week was really focused on the Drawdown. Everyone go get your book, and feel free to write comments, ask questions, and follow up. There's lots of things we can do together, and that's the good part about this. So thanks once again, and over to you, Domenico.
Yes, so we're gonna close. We are gonna fade with also some music, and I won't tell you also the words, but you can understand, and it's very in the topic of today. So thank you very much for being staying with us, and see you the next Sustainable Sunday. Bye.
And then one day, just everything seems to be falling apart all around us. It's a mess. Everything seems to be against us. We live and we learn. Yes, we live and we learn. We live and we learn. Yes, we live and we learn. such a shame when we choose to live out of fear, out of fear. We live and we learn. We just live